Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark.
We are the asteroid. There is no away. Global warming at work.
Essentially, it means I'm dragging my anchor.
It's damp and humid. It's the ideal conditions for mushroom growing.
A post-human story about the ocean that inherits our human consciousness.
It's about just kind of rendering visible something that's been invisible.
I think the most important thing for this project is to get people to start thinking about and conversing on the subject matter of the ecological crisis. When you see these signs, you start to pay attention and you think, oh, this came from an authority figure. And what's really interesting is that these people really are authority figures. We have a poet from the Marshall Islands, Greta Thunberg. We have 12 indigenous elders represented. They're not authority figures from the government, but these are people that are the front line, or they've spent their whole life or most of their life thinking about these issues and these problems. So they become a really nice bridge for us to be able to understand what's really happening out in the world beyond our little bubbles that we tend to live in.
All of the work that I do, and I think all of the work that's sort of in the programme, is about destabilising a kind of anthropocentric view of the world, the fact that we're the most important thing on this planet, which really isn't the case. The piece Chaos Spirit was really inspired by the element of the air and the wind. And when I was invited to make this flag for Somerset House, I immediately sort of thought of the flag as a sculptural form that's constantly shifting and changing and making this element that is obviously something that's very important to us and sustains us, but is, I suppose, somehow very overlooked. The flag is a visual cue to invite you to listen to the piece, which is available online. And also during the run of the flag, it's available on a very bright pink bench in the Siemens Hall. And that has a relationship to the flag itself, which was inspired by international maritime warning flags. Essentially, it means I'm dragging my anchor. And all of these things that these flags represented seem to be kind of pertinent to what's happening at the moment, either politically with climate change or our relationship to nature.
Climate change projects seem to be really rooted in the present, and a way in which we depart from that is by using speculative design conversations to form a narrative about the future.
The piece is kind of imagining in the future where Somerset House would be submerged with water due to climate change, essentially.
What we wanted to do was to flip the narratives around climate change. So we want to take it another perspective by creating this post-human world where the humans do not exist anymore, but our emotional and our kind of physical legacies left behind.
Where we can see and learn about some of the new organisms that have evolved that, although have fishy forms, have human psychology.
We really want people to be more conscious about their own legacies and what they are passing on to kind of future generations.
It's about looking at where our food comes from. It's looking at the relationship between the producer and the consumer. It's looking at reuniting culture and agriculture. We want to kind of explore neglected spaces or hidden spaces within the architecture of Somerset House, and to begin to green the space and bring food growing into the heart of the building. So we're growing mushrooms in the coal hold and we're hoping to start a small social enterprise. So we're also growing rhubarb on the roof of the conference centre and in the light wells. So it's looking at reconnecting people with the process, right from creating soil through to growing something, harvesting it, cooking, eating together, and that social act of eating together. So it's actually about that whole cycle.
For the Earth Day season at Somerset House, I created a series of poems called Loneliness, A Climate Change Story, where I bring together two seemingly kind of disparate narratives, one about loneliness, another about climate change, together to explore different understandings of loneliness within a climate change context. Words like sustainability and carbon footprint and emissions are part of the climate change narrative, but I think we actually have to think broader than that. So I don't necessarily talk about those things. I talk about the fact that food prices are increasing. I think about the fact that, you know, people who live in cities are more likely to have respiratory problems, and that affects disproportionately people of colour, or, you know, people from the diaspora who their countries of heritage are changing because of floods and droughts. And once you start talking about that, people are far more interested and engaged. I see that as political. So for me, it's less about capital P politics, it's more about thinking politically, but still talking about human stories which engage lots of different people. I think it's important for artists to kind of incorporate political messages around climate change in their work.
To flip the narratives around climate change.
And just think about it in a different way.
Rendering visible something that's been invisible.
That's the whole role of the show.